Hello everybody, and this is Long Turtle coming back to discuss with you more different tips and things for people just starting out with Darkest Dungeon, the game that will use RNG to break you. So, when I started this game out, there was a lot of things that I suppose I thought were going to be very easy to understand and figure out, and not understanding or figuring those out crippled me in the first 2 times I tried to play the game. And made for a pretty unfun experience. So, whereas I made a video that we talked about the estate itself and all of the different buildings, I thought now we would talk about the estate map. Now, on PS4, to get to the estate map from the estate itself, you just have to hit the middle button of the PlayStation controller on the right side, and it'll bring you to this screen here that you see, the estate map. Now, it's going to have 4 different dungeons that you will see. The Ruins, the Warrens, the Weald, and the Cove. Now, I say 4 dungeons, and you'll see that there's 5, because up in the right corner you see there's the Darkest Dungeon, and we'll cover that in time, because you're not going to go to that till the end of the game, as it is the point of the game, effectively. Each one of these dungeons has different things that you can find in them, as well as different enemies, obviously. The Ruins are predominantly undead-based and human-based, like cultist kind of people. The Warrens consist of pigs, like pig warriors, and sometimes various forms of humans. The Weald has some humans, and it also has mushroom creatures and beasts of different types, like wolves and things of that nature. And the Cove has fish people, and of course sometimes humans. Humans are pretty much like everywhere in the game, like just cultists and stuff like that. They throw them in there a lot. They're very generic. They're actually pretty good, so you got to look out for them here and there. You'll very, very quickly learn to identify different enemies. But that'll be for another video when we actually make videos on each one of the types of dungeons and different characters and party makeups that you can bring that can really, really help. So, when you're going through looking at the estate map, you can see on mine, I'm pretty far in this game, you can see I have a bunch of level 6 characters on the side and things of that nature, and I have different colored circular icons and everything, which are different levels of dungeons that I can go into. When you start out the game, all of them are going to be this green color. Now, there are multiple different types of dungeons, and we're going to go over right now the different information you would actually need to tell what the hell you're looking at. So if you look on the left side, where it says the estate map, you'll have a brief description of the dungeon itself, which just gives you a little bit of info. It's not that big a deal. But below that is what you're going to want to look at. So there's going to be a length of the dungeon, which can be a short dungeon, which consists of anywhere from like 5 to 8 rooms. And then there is a medium dungeon, which is going to be about double that. And then there's a long dungeon, which can easily make it to 19 to 20-something rooms, which is pretty big. So you're going to have like the length of short, medium, and long is actually telling you how many rooms are going to be in the dungeon effectively, like a ballpark estimation. Now to the right of that, you're going to see different levels of the dungeon, and they're going to be color-coded, but they also will be, I believe it is Apprentice, Veteran, and then there is Champion. Now, Apprentice is going to be for level 1 to 2 characters. Veteran is going to be for level 3 to 4 characters, and Champion is going to be for your level 5 and your level 6 characters, and those are the hardest dungeons that you can go into. Below that, you're going to see things called goals. That's going to be how you actually can complete a dungeon and get out of it. You don't actually have to explore the entirety of a dungeon to actually complete the goal and then leave. The 2 most general ones that you're going to run into is explore 90% of the rooms in the dungeon, which means that you don't really have to worry about what's in the hallways much. You just have to make sure you enter the rooms at the very least. And the other one is going to be complete 100% of room battles, which means every room that has a battle in it, you have to fight and kill them, and then you can go. Which means sometimes you might go into a 12-room dungeon, and there's only 4 room battles, and you do them within the first 6 rooms, you can just leave. You don't have to complete the rest of that dungeon. Pretty cool. Another thing to keep in mind when you're choosing your dungeons is after you look at the goals, the length, and the level of the dungeon, you're going to look at rewards. Now, rewards are cool. They all consist of the same thing. You're going to get some money, you're going to get some heirlooms, and you're normally going to get an item. And in some cases, rare cases, you're going to get 2 items if it's a really hard dungeon or maybe a boss fight, which we'll get to. So when you're looking at rewards, you oftentimes, when you start out especially, you're going to be looking at the heirlooms that you want, and you're going to look at the items that you want. Now, you're not, obviously, when you start out this game, going to be able to tell what items are. You can hold down the L2 button for PS4, and you can look at what items do by selecting them and moving over them. So in this example here, you'll see that I'm looking at basically gold, a portrait, and then this item over here, which is the damage stone. So the damage stone is a common item, plus 10% damage to a character and minus 4 to their dodge. If I'm using a character that has a crappy dodge anyway, then I'm not going to be able to make good no matter how many trinkets I put on them. But they deal a lot of damage. I might just want to double down since their dodge isn't going to help them anyway and just make them do more damage. It's pretty cool. When you first start out the game, you're mostly going to be looking at, for what type of dungeons you want to delve into, you're going to be looking at what items they can give you and what heirlooms they can give you, and that's going to help you get a really strong start in the beginning of the game. Like I said in a previous video, you don't have to worry about money as much when you start out. It's nice. You'll eventually be able to upgrade armor. You need it a little bit to buy skills, de-stress, and take quirks off, but if you learn how to manage your stress well, it's not going to be that bad, and we'll also go over other strategies for that in another video. One of the other things that you probably noticed on my maps is this large skull symbol that looks like a thing popping towards you, getting ready to bite your head off. That is the symbol of a boss fight. So on here, I have a boss fight unlocked for the Warrens to kill the Formless Flesh. And you'll see the goal is quite literally just to kill him. Now that means that I'm going to, as soon as I kill him, it's done. I don't have to just explore the whole dungeon, I just have to find him. Now, boss fights are generally going to come with awesome items, a lot of gold and a lot of heirlooms, but the items generally don't have a downside as much as they just have upsides, so boss fight items that you can gain are normally pretty strong. Now, when I say boss fight items, I'm referring specifically to the highest level of the boss, which I'll talk about right now. So, each one of these different dungeons, you'll notice there's a red bar that I have filled up all the way on these two on the top, the Warrens and the Ruins, but on the Cove and the Weald, you can see the black still showing. Those are progress bars. Now, progress bars are going to fill up each time you complete a dungeon quest in that respective dungeon. And the amount of progress is determined by the length of the dungeon. So I think it is a short dungeon will give you 25% progress on your bar, a medium will give you 50, and I think a long gives you either a 75 or 100. It might be 100%. And once they fill up, they'll go to another level. You'll see that mine are at level 7, 7, 5, and 5. I have a ways to go for the Cove and the Weald still, but basically every single time that you upgrade that fully, it'll unlock a boss fight. Now, boss fights are generally, there's, I believe, 2 bosses per dungeon, and they have various levels. Basically, for all of your different power levels, so you have Apprentice, Veteran, and the Champion, like we talked about, there's going to be a boss. So when we look at, let's say, the Ruins one, there's the Apprentice Necromancer, the Necromancer, and then I think it's like the Necromancer Lord. Those are all 3 different levels that you'll unlock as you unlock progress in the Ruins. And you'll also have to defeat the Sonorous Prophet, the Fulminating Prophet, and the Gibbering Prophet, which will unlock respectively. As you level up those specific dungeons, you'll unlock the boss fights for them at various levels, and you'll learn how to fight them and do all that stuff. They give you cool items. It's pretty sweet. You will figure out which dungeons you like to combat against, and you will learn which bosses you're going to unlock first and kind of take down. There's no specific order you have to do this. It's more of just a player choice. I personally tackled the Ruins very, very quickly because I'm comfortable fighting against unholy creatures like dead people, and the Warrens was just an easy enough thing for me. to overcome, and the bosses, I actually don't find them to be that hard, so I like that one as well. We'll go over boss fights in another video, and I'll help you guys get through those, because you can actually take out some of the bosses in this game with enough preparation. You can take some of them out in anywhere from 2 to 4 rounds of combat. It's pretty gnarly, actually, at times. One of the last things that I think we'll go over is the Darkest Dungeon itself. You'll notice I wasn't talking about the different levels and things like that for the Darkest Dungeon. The reason for this is because the Darkest Dungeon is the end point of the game and can only be entered by 6th level characters, which takes a little while to get them up there. The Darkest Dungeon is very, very different from all of the other dungeons on the estate map. It has 4 levels specifically, so there's no multiple quests. You see there's just that one quest icon, that's for the first level of the Darkest Dungeon. When I beat that, the second level will open up, and then the third, and so on and so forth. Now, the weird thing about the Darkest Dungeon is once characters have entered it and beaten a level of it, they will not go back into the Darkest Dungeon. They're good to go. They're kind of like retired. So, you need to come up with a 4-person party for each level of the Darkest Dungeon that you plan to complete out of those 4 levels, so you're going to have to, by the end game, effectively have 4 parties of 4 characters that can each tackle one level of the Darkest Dungeon. Now, keep in mind, there's a special ending and a special achievement that's unlocked by beating the 4th and final level of the Darkest Dungeon with Dismas and Renault, who are the 2 characters, the Highwayman and the Crusader, that you start the game with to make it to the estate itself. So, keep that in mind when you're playing and you're starting the game, that you might want to save them for the last and final level, the 4th level of the Darkest Dungeon, to get that special ending and achievement. A lot of people find that out all too late, and then they get really sad, and they're like, God damn it, and they have to play the game again. You're probably going to end up playing this game multiple times. It's going to destroy parts of your soul that will never get back, which is fine. So you'll start to experiment around with these various things, but like I said, you're going to start off with all apprentice level short dungeons for the most part, and as you do a few of those, you're going to unlock some mediums, and then you'll start to unlock some boss fights. It's going to be fine. So you'll go through, experiment with what you like, and each of these 4 dungeons has different strengths and weaknesses. None of them are like really harder than the other per se. It just comes down to a preference of, it's going to matter A, on your playstyle. If you're somebody who loves to bring characters that punch people in the face really hard and then blights people to do damage to them over time, you'll do awesome in the Ruins, and for the most part you'll do awesome in the Cove, and you'll do okay in the Warrens. But the Warrens has a lot of things that are resistant to blight and better off if you're trying to bleed them, and the Weald itself has things that are very, very resistant to blight and stun, so if you bring those things, you're going to be sad. And then they have a lot of frontline fighters that have what's called protection, which means every single time you hit them with a damage attack, it takes off a percentage of that damage, like armor, as it were. So you're going to go up with your big hitty guys and hit something, and if you were doing something like 14 damage, you might be looking at doing 7 or even lower than that and be like, oh shit. So you got to learn those things over time, which you will. There's a lot of information to take in this game, so we're just going to take it piece by piece. So that is the overall of the estate map, and now you kind of know what everything is and what it does. It should be pretty easy for you to start navigating around it. Just keep in mind, like I said in the beginning, heirlooms and the dungeon's rewards, because you're going to want to look for strong items that make your characters awesome, the ones that you're using currently, and go for those in the beginning, just so that you can kind of build up your trinkets a little bit. Trinkets are going to be an integral part of getting through dungeons, and especially boss fights, and we will cover those when we cover building a party and looking at characters as a whole, which will probably be our next video. So thanks guys for hanging out with me, and I will catch you on the next one.